We've looked at many collectible radios on this channel that are simply gorgeous. Well, today we're going to look at a great many more that simply aren't, including the ugliest radio of all time. And we're going to talk about the history of collecting transistor radios. Yes, there's a history, and I was there. In those early days of collecting these radios, there were no pictures of them to be found anywhere. There were no collector books about them, and of course, no internet. I didn't just stumble across one and say, "Oh, this is interesting. I should collect these." No, the idea just floated into my head one day that it would be fun to have the very first transistor radio, which I assumed would be a Sony. Turns out, it wasn't a Sony. I began looking in pawn shops and thrift stores and found nothing. People just thought they were worthless and didn't even try to offer them for sale. So I began cultivating sources any way I could by talking to sellers at flea markets and antique stores and letting them know I'd pay actual money for these radios. "Those?" they'd sometimes say. "Who'd want those?" To which I could only answer that yes, I am an idiot, and yes, I want those. Where these sellers might have dismissed me as a kook, the way the pawn shops and thrift stores did, the flea market sellers were at the time witnessing a pog frenzy, with Beanie Babies just around the corner. So it seemed to them that the collector world had gone mad. So if this guy, me, wants some worthless old transistor radio and is willing to pay, well, why not? So they'd take my phone number. And after many of those conversations, I began to get calls from these sources. Those calls would start something like this: "Hey, do you still want those little radios? I found you a sweet one." Now, since they still had no understanding of why I wanted them, they had no idea what would make one sweet. But I'd listen to their description, and intrigued by the mystery of it, if nothing else, I'd make arrangements to go and see it, or send them money and hope for a great radio by return mail. What you're looking at are the kinds of radios I usually got. In fact, these are some of the actual radios I actually got in the mail. Back then, I thought it was a reasonable gamble to take a chance on a radio I hadn't seen. I had no idea how many blah radios there were. I didn't know what the ratio of blah to good was, so I couldn't assess what the chances were that I was just wasting my money. As you can probably tell, I did waste money. I recall that I had naively estimated a bad-to-good ratio of 2-to-1, and so thought that if I bought 3 radios, sight unseen, at least one would be a good one. Also, back then I figured there probably weren't more than 50 different transistor radio models ever made. So on both accounts, I was way off. I tried to improve my odds by having sellers send me pictures of radios they'd found, but this met a certain resistance because, remember, not only was there no internet, there were no camera phones either. And as popular as film cameras were, antique dealers never seemed to have one. And it cost money for film and developing. About the best I could manage was to get a seller to lay a radio face down on a Xerox machine and mail me the copy. I couldn't see much with that, but I could see if I recognized the radio and if it had potential or was just hopeless. But most of the time, sellers sensed my eager craving and refused to send me anything, and instead just said, "Well, do you want it or not? You know other people are asking for these." They played me like a violin. And so the Postal Service began leaving boxes on my doorstep containing these mystery radios. I'd open that box with hopes high, and then, well, disappointment. And that's my complaint here with these radios. Not that they are plain or bland or ugly or boring. I can forgive all that. What I can't forgive is that they disappointed me. Even now, when I see these radios I acquired that way, I feel that same disappointment. But I still keep them, and I still value them as part of my collection. Not the best part, obviously, but still a part. I've learned from them. And every now and then I see in one of these disappointments something I hadn't noticed. Some spark of inspired design, some attitude. Here in this Juliet that I showed at the beginning of this video, and perhaps rashly called ugly, what I see most is verve. This radio is just trying so hard to be liked. How can I fault it for disappointing me? As you see, we have here a profoundly ridiculous phony alligator skin. And that's a treat for sure. And that is paired with a thick chrome metal front that makes the radio much too heavy to carry in a shirt pocket. If you bent over, it would fall out and break your foot. In addition to that, the radio features 14 transistors inside of it, most of which probably add nothing whatever to the radio's performance. So it's got that transistor war aspect to it, which I've talked about in another video. Most U.S. importers of radios made in the Far East in this era were based in Los Angeles, San Francisco, or New York. The Juliet folks were based in Miami. The same Miami with this great Art Deco architecture, palm trees, and the glorious Fontainebleau Hotel somehow also produced Juliet. Some of the hokiest, over-decorated designs of the era came from them and employ their go-to palette of tacky techniques, including fake wood grains, fake animal skins, and chunky chrome trim. So is this the ugliest transistor radio of all time? Arguably, it is. But if I say that, well, that puts me on the spot, because I have to admit, I like it. You may have noticed that I'm really talking about two different kinds of ugly here. The bunch of radios I showed earlier, the disappointments, their sin is their plainness. There were a lot of plain radios that looked like their makers didn't even try. Plain and ugly are occasionally synonyms, but by no means always. You can tell the Juliet folks really tried here, and were probably proud of their achievement. No, you can't accuse this Juliet of being plain. Let's look at one more example of what I mean. When I found this gaudy Artemis radio, I thought, oh boy, what a stinker. I just couldn't resist it, of course, and it's been stinking up my collection ever since. This is like the Juliet in that it is that other kind of ugly that I find much more endearing than those plain radios. The Artemis, like the Juliet, and this Starlight shirt pocket are really trying to be liked. Maybe I'm responding to that and appreciating the effort that went into them. Or maybe, on the day they handed out taste, I was off at a flea market somewhere. Taste, art, beauty. These are all subjective things, and you may well disagree with my opinions here. Perhaps your own special childhood radio is included here, and you don't appreciate some wise guy putting it down. No offense intended. Look, here's my own special radio from my own childhood, this Invicta. You can put it down if you like. I'm not offended. It's special to me, but I didn't design it. When I started to collect transistor radios, it didn't take long before I found better-looking radios than my Invicta. Radios like these. Ooh. Compared to these, my special little Invicta was pretty plain. Oh, and look at these. Admiral, Philco, General Electric, RCA. It's one thing to forgive the little guy, the new kid, the budget-minded El Cheapo no-name radios, but these aren't from little guys. These are major brand radios, major brands on the way to becoming minor brands. I wonder why. Oh, now here's something. I'm rethinking this one right now. Not to play devil's advocate, but I like this one. It's a realistic from Radio Shack, and, well, it's growing on me. I wonder where this one was made. Japan. I probably would have guessed Hong Kong. Nice. Is there a dime's worth of difference between this Raleigh and this OMGS? No, there isn't. Well, these aren't too bad. I remember talking myself into that when I got them, both at the same time. Not too bad, I says to myself. The little stars, that kind of boomerang thing. I mean, they tried. But those things would have been a lot better if they weren't just printed flat on metal. So, since I've confessed to a certain fondness for that Juliet, I guess I can't call it the ugliest radio of all time. Then what is? Something's got to be, otherwise I've tricked you into watching this video under false pretenses. Well, after long consideration, I have a nominee for the title of the ugliest radio of all time. A radio with utterly no style, no verve at all, not a flicker of grace or hint of beauty. A clunky shirt pocket radio so heavy that it would tear the shirt pocket right off that shirt, fall to the ground, break apart, and laugh at you till the batteries died. Yeah, this General Electric. And I have an extra reason for disliking this radio. Growing up, my favorite cousin had one of these, and I felt kind of sorry for him. His dad, my uncle, had bought it for him for Christmas in 1965. My uncle was a union man, and he wanted to buy American. This was one of the few American-made radios still on the market in that year, a market that by then was dominated by imported radios made in the Far East. Though I didn't understand my uncle's sentiment at the time, I do now. I can now see and appreciate why he wanted to support his fellow American workers. But did the radio have to be so ugly? I mean, I thought that then, and I think it now. GE knew how to make a good-looking radio. Witness this radio of theirs from 5 years earlier, their beautiful P830 model from 1960. The underpainted slide rule dial right up at the top, the shapely cabinet and grille, and the interesting texture on that grill. Did management at General Electric seriously think this was an improvement? Or did they think they could cheap out on styling and no one would notice or care? Here they were, at a pivotal moment in time, losing market share to foreign-made radios at an alarming rate. And this is their response? Well, how did that work out?